updated link. So my name is Eugene Jakubov, and I'm a senior consultant with CBS, Canadian Business and Enterprise Services. Our company is a private company supporting many small, medium-sized businesses, starting, incorporating, providing with various types of legal and compliance support. I'm myself a lawyer licensed in the province of Ontario, and today I will talk about the legal aspects mostly relevant for Ontario-located businesses that start and operate online e-commerce businesses. So a couple of introductory comments. First of all, please everybody keep your microphones and cameras off so we do not interfere with the presentation. At the end of today's presentation, I will allocate a couple of minutes for questions and answers. If you have questions, it's better post them on the board as in the comments, and I will answer them when I finish the presentation today. Finally, today's presentation is available as a PDF for the distribution by Markham Public Library at the end of presentation today. Ask the representative and they will send it to you. I'll prepare the PDF file at the end of presentation today or early morning tomorrow. So let's start, and again, a little introduction. So I manage a small YouTube channel, which is called Business in Canada Do It Right. You can find there are lots of presentations similar to today's in a shorter versions, 10-15 minutes each, about different topics of legal aspects of operating business in Canada. So if you have more questions or you would like to get more information, there's a QR code on the screen. You can scan it, or you can just go on YouTube and search it. Also, at the end of today's presentation, I will provide a list of useful links that you can use to start your business or to do searches or to get more information about today or relevant topics discussed today. So now let's start and talk about e-commerce and what are the legal aspects that are unique or special that any e-commerce based business should keep in mind and address before, during their operations. So first of all, we have to understand what is e-commerce, how does it operate, and what are the unique aspects of e-commerce operations that we should keep in mind. So definition is simple. I just took it from a Wikipedia. And e-commerce is essentially any type of businesses offering for sale their products or services online using internet, where the payment and the transaction, everything takes place online. There are two major modes of e-commerce operations. One is through your own website. So you build your own website and you offer your services or products for sale there. People can come to your website and buy the products from it directly. It has its own benefits, but also drawbacks, as compared to the second mode, where you use an online platform, e-commerce platform, such as Amazon, eBay, Shopify, and many more currently available on the market. And they also provide different supporting services, such as fulfillment, 3PL, distribution, and some other benefits that you can gain from them. There are also certain drawbacks, of course, the commissions that they charge, but some others that we'll discuss today as we progress through the presentation. So what is the framework within which the e-commerce businesses operate from the legal perspective again? And it's important to understand that any e-commerce business is just a regular business. There's no legal definition of e-commerce business in Ontario Canadian laws. And from the legal perspective, we'll look at e-commerce business just as any other type of business operating in Canada, with the, of course, unique characteristic of being fully located online. In the legal environment of the e-commerce business, it is important to understand that the transaction is a regular buy-sell transaction with the agreement or contract being formed when the client or visitor of your website or your store on e-commerce platform finalizes the transaction, presses buy button, and the transaction is being approved. You have an agreement where you agreed to sell the product to a client. The client agreed to buy that product from you. And now the only question is, what are the additional terms of that agreement? And I'll talk about it in detail today that are relevant and important for your business and for your business operations, and that you have to take care to protect your business from the liabilities. Online business. So because we're located online and the from one side is the distribution, from the other side is the accessibility of your store. They completely changed the nature of business. We are very common and used to it today. It was very new and uncommon 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. But being online provides certain benefits as well as implies certain responsibilities and liabilities attached to business operations, and I'll cover it to a certain extent today. So first step with regards to understanding the legal aspects of operating e-commerce is to understand who are the parties. And as an opposite to many other business operations, brick-and-mortar stores, the legal environment of operating e-commerce business is much more diverse, although you can compare it to a store located in a mall, where you also have multiple parties involved in provision of a service of sale of product. So first of all, of course, us, we're the sellers. We sell our products online. We're the major party together with the buyer. Then there's the e-commerce platform, which plays a major role in sale of your business, of your products. And it's important to understand that many e-commerce platforms, let's say such as Amazon, they will also provide you almost every single aspect of the transaction fulfillment, from the initial sales, processing of the payment, and transfer of funds from the buyer through the platform to you, all the way through the sales and fulfillment of the product delivery. So e-commerce platforms play a major role in the transaction, and they should be addressed as a part of the transaction to whichever extent I'll cover slightly today. We have payment processor, which could be either e-commerce platform, or if you operate your own website, then you will have to find a payment processor that will be processing those payments, depositing them into your bank account. And that implies the responsibility and the question of who is responsible for, let's say, improper processing, recalls, payment that didn't go through, who's responsible for the collection and retention or protection of the information being collected during the payment processing. These questions we as business owners must keep in mind, because eventually we might have to deal with them, whether from the point of, okay, someone's information got disclosed, now who's responsible for under the privacy legislation, or the payment seemingly went through, but you never got the money from the client, who's responsible for that. Advertising providers, again, people online, and there are many tools that advertise your products or services, and essentially assist you in developing your sales across different platforms or across the internet. In many cases, what they do is less controlled by you, especially if these are different tools for the advertising online. But eventually, you as business owner whose product is being advertised might be found liable or responsible for the nature and scope of advertisement, and we have to be careful about it. Fulfillment, I already covered it partially today, and of course, buyer. Regulators, although they're not parties to the e-commerce transaction, but they're a very important party to the e-commerce business operations, because there are different rules that might apply to the type of transaction. There are different rules that will apply to the question of where the transaction takes place, whether at the location of the seller, at the location of the buyer, or anywhere else. And there are multiple rules and regulations that might apply to the way that you operate your business. For example, and I'll talk about it shortly today, Quebec rules with regards to the French language. And these rules have been changed and modified drastically in the recent couple of months, with French language being mostly the only language you can communicate your business communication in the province of Quebec. Certain similar language rules will apply in different jurisdictions in different countries. And again, this is the unique nature of our e-commerce business. Essentially, we are borderless, and our website could have been seen from any place on Earth. These special rules might imply different responsibilities on us as business owners. So I'll continue with the unique features of e-commerce. So of course, we have greater reach of clients, and all of these features, you have to remember, they provide us with benefits, but also certain risks and drawbacks that we should keep in mind. So from one side, yes, we can reach more clients. And another side of the same story is we can sell to significantly more people at the same time than a regular store or regular business, because transactions that take place online, there's no queue, there's no line to the cashier, and multiple people can buy at the same time. We lack the personal interaction with the buyer, which implies certain, it reduces the time for the sale. When I go on Amazon, I do not talk to the store owner. I just buy whatever I need. It's a short time transaction. From the other side, you do not have the ability and the proximity with the buyer to assess whether that buyer is capable or at risk, capable to complete the transaction, or at risk of purchasing your products, especially when you sell products that could be used with multiple uses, let's say BB guns or even paint. Sometimes at the store, when the person comes in, you see that the person is disturbed and in distress. Maybe you can identify basic signs of incapacity. As a store manager or owner, you can take certain measures. Online, you have no ability to do so. You have no ability to identify whether your buyer is over 16 years age limit, or maybe it's 3 years old that plays with his or her mom's phone. And then, does the transaction have a legal validity? And there are lots of stories that you can see online with children buying hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars of games from Play Store or App Store or some other online options for the purchase, like e-commerce platforms. As I said already, we have borderless operations. We should be aware of international laws. And many of international sales, or even inside Canada, if you look at Canada and our provinces, we have different HST or value-added tax or sales tax rules applicable from one province to another. In Canada, the system is relatively simple because CRA is the only agency that governs all the provinces and is responsible for the governance and regulation of HST rules. So the rule in Canada is very basic, and we look at the location of delivery. So where was the product or service provided to the buyer? That is the location at which you charge the HST. Now, although it seems similar, there are certain provinces that significantly differ from Ontario. Here we have 13%. Alberta has 5%. It doesn't have provincial HST at all. On the other side, Quebec has, I think it's about 17% or 16% of HST, which is significantly higher. Now, the question is, if I buy something from Amazon, do I pay 13%, 5%, 16%? And while Amazon is usually dealing with this as a large platform, having reach across different provinces and countries, when you operate from your own website, you have to think through and you have to realize how these rules work. Now, perception of a larger seller, why I added here? Because from one side, it helps us to sell. We buy from Amazon, we think that Amazon is or eBay or Shopify. But you have to keep in mind the other side of the same coin, which is not as positive as the one that I just said. And that's when a client buys something from platforms like Amazon, Shopify, Etsy, the client usually does not realize that they buy from a small business owner operating from maybe a small warehouse or even a basement at their home, and the buyer sees Amazon in front of them. So if something happened as a result of the purchase, so let's say buyer bought, I don't know, a set of coffee mugs and got either poisoned by the paint on those mugs, or a piece that broke off because of low quality of a mug, and now the buyer wants or considers, even contemplates suing someone, it doesn't pass the buyer's mind that they work with a little seller. They see the large platform from which they bought, essentially increasing the risk of legal liabilities and lawsuits that we as business owners will have to deal, and we have to keep it in mind as we develop our business. Now, understanding our liability as a business owners and how, from which sources and points of transactions they will arise throughout the e-commerce transaction of buy and sell. So warranty, just like with any other product, we are responsible to provide the warranty for our products, a question could become very interesting. What is the warranty for services that you provide online? Let's say marketing or consulting services online or training online. But the rules of warranty should be followed, and it's important to understand that there are no basic legal definition of what warranty is. On October 16th, I believe, in one of the slides, there's a footnote about it. I will be facilitating a similar seminar like today about the understanding of the rules of contract. So how we as business owners should approach the contract, reading it, drafting it, what are the main points in the contract that we should cover. And warranty is always one of the major points because the law doesn't define the warranty. And then if we didn't define it as a business owner, as a seller, then there will be the question, what is the warranty, how long it goes, what does it cover? And there are multiple issues that we might have to deal with. Connected to this, another aspect, and that is product liability. As an opposite to warranty, though, the product liability asks who's responsible for the damages that the buyer or some innocent bystanders sustained as a result of the use of product that we sell or services that we provide. And it is very important I always tell as a lawyer, look at the worst case scenario. Think, what is, reasonably speaking, worst thing that can happen from the utilization or use of your products, and get prepared to it. Now, I'll get to it in a moment, but all these points are being explained because we as business owners can prevent to a certain extent their application to us or determine the limits in which they apply by drafting and providing proper terms of transaction, proper terms of use of our website, and proper terms of the and conditions under which we agree to sell the product to the buyer. And then as a result of the pressing that final buy button, I buy, or check marking, I understand that accept the terms and conditions of the transaction, we will be at least to a certain extent protected, and definitely will know within which boundaries of these liabilities we operate. Product safety is connected to product liability. In many countries, in many regions in the world, especially Canada, US, we have what is called product recall obligations. And essentially, if the government agency or we ourselves as business owners identify certain risks or certain flaws or dangers with the product that were not inherent of the product, and we found them later on, especially in recent months and years, there are lots of recalls associated with electrical equipment that can catch fire, shortcut, or electrocute the users. There are certain recall obligations, and again, we have to be aware of them, but we also can define certain rules about those recalls in our terms of transaction. Compliance with laws, as I already said, first of all, compliance with regulations with regards to the language, origin of the products. There are many countries that define which kind of origin you can use. US is one of those countries that is very strict about origins. Canada also has the competition bureau that deals with that. In many cases, you will pay attention, let's say that products would be marked as manufactured in China or India, but designed and developed in other country. And again, be careful if you want to put this. I think it makes sense. Let's say if you design your own products, but you outsource the manufacturing, putting the designed or developed in Canada could increase the reputation of the product, increase its kind of position on the sales side of the transaction. But you have to be careful, especially when you sell it across the border, how all these rules have been applied to the product. Privacy. I'll talk a little bit more today about the privacy rules that apply to different transactions and to different instances where we collect information from our clients, where we are mandated to protect this information. Do we store it? Do we destroy it? It's up to us to decide. But as long as the information is under our control, we must comply with certain regulations and rules. As I said, I'll talk about it in a moment. So geography of e-commerce is also important aspects that we have to understand as business owners. So as I already tried to explain, which taxes apply on the sale of a product based on the territory, you have to investigate it. There's no right or wrong answer. You have to search it. In many cases, though, when you provide, let's say, service, you could be proactive. You can look at the rules. And let's say if you want to avoid unnecessary complications, you can define in the sales agreement that your services are being provided or delivered in your location. So let's say if we talk about Ontario, Toronto, we define that our services are being supplied to the client in the city of Toronto, city of Markham, province of Ontario, under the laws of Ontario. This way, you can reasonably charge the 13% of HST, which should be sufficient for the transaction. The story could be a little bit different with the products, but again, just learn the topic, see with the rules how they apply, and determine them. Language requirements are also covered already partially. Ensure compliance with language, especially if your website is dedicated or oriented to certain geographic areas. Make sure that you comply with what language is available, in which language your website is presented, or add an option for a person to choose. So before your website appears, there's a choice. Do I want to get it in English, in French, in Spanish, in Latin, or whatever else language is mandated by the jurisdiction where you offer your products for sale. It's a little bit complicated, and no one is required from you to understand every single legal system in the world. I don't know myself, but when we sell our products or especially services, it is important for us to understand from one side which law could apply to that transaction, but from the other side, we can define it. So just like in any other agreement of purchase or sale or any other legal contract where I, as a lawyer, would put this contract is being interpreted under the laws of Ontario, Canada, we can define it in the terms and conditions of our website. This way, at least you will eliminate the necessity of A, learning dozens and hundreds of different legal systems, and B, we can also define where the legal conflicts have been resolved, essentially limit the jurisdiction for the lawsuits to Ontario, Canada. A, it will make it easier for you to deal with it because it's closer to home, less costly. Usually the litigation for non-resident of a country is much more expensive because of the distance, because of the communicational issues. This way you at least can control where the conflict will be litigated and how it will be litigated, whether through the courts or arbitration. We can include this all in the sales agreement or terms of the sale that are being accepted by the buyer during the completion of the transaction. If you orient your website to certain areas, to certain geographical areas, especially if you sell in Canada, US mostly, be aware and learn the basic rules of the transaction in those destinations. So age of minority could be very different. Alcohol is a simple example. No one suggests selling alcohol online, but as an example, what could be legal in Canada could be very much illegal in the US and vice versa. Age of minority for the legal capacity, at which age a person can sign an agreement with you that could be enforceable. Now, some jurisdictions will say a contract that is signed by a minor is void and it doesn't exist at all. Others would say it is voidable, but if the minor becomes a grown-up individual and does not cancel or void that agreement, the agreement does become legally enforceable. So different rules, and again, the more you're present in certain areas or the more they become the center of your business attention, learn the rules. So as I said, basic aspects of the agreement. Make sure that you define what is included. Make sure that the warranty is defined. Returns, replacement, also important. It's a little bit different from the warranty. Amazon is known for that. I can return whatever I bought within 30 days, no questions asked. You have to be aware of the rules if you use a platform, or you have to define those rules if you want to use your website. Delivery, it's an important aspect. Again, look at Amazon. When I buy as a buyer from Amazon, I know that the shipment is included. But in many situations where we work online with different products that maybe not Amazonable, you want to make sure that you define who's responsible for the shipment costs, include them in the price, of course, calculations, but also define at which time the responsibility and the ownership, the legal ownership for the product is being transferred to the client, we as business owners usually want it to happen as soon as possible. So the moment either the transaction was approved or the product has been shipped and you have the tracking, you want to make sure that you're no longer responsible for the product and the client is the one that's responsible. So if something happens to the product, you can deal with it, but not on the in the position that you were the one responsible to cover everything associated with the transportation and delivery costs. Post-sale services, again, is an opposite to warranty. It's how much of a customer support, training to certain products you agreed to provide, you must provide. Again, different rules in different locations. Make sure that you understand it. And who provides the warranty in the case you do not sell your own products. In many situations, let's say, again, Amazon, they facilitate the transaction, but have nothing to do with warranty. But they're Amazon products that Amazon sells its own products. And then Amazon is the one who provides the warranty. So same thing when you sell third-party products through your website, make sure that you define who's responsible for warranty. The simplest example is pay attention. Sometimes you buy a product from Canadian Tire or Lowe's, and you will see the sticker on that product that says, if you find any flaw or problem with the product, do not bring it back to the store, give us a call. And usually that would be the manufacturer or the supplier who wants to deal with that warranty, not the Canadian Tire. Here's the footnote. So understanding of business contracts seminar will be offered on October 16, at which point I will cover these and many other points in much more detail than today. So technical aspects of the agreement. The question that we as business owners must understand is at which point it is signed, at which point the customer can force you to sell, or you have the right to terminate the contract. Usually that would be at the point of payment. Sometimes it would be of the time of shipment, depending on the nature of the product. Again, we as business owners would want the agreement to be signed as soon as possible. Because it will provide protection to us. B, because it will provide us with an opportunity to cancel it if we come to a conclusion that we don't want to proceed with the contract. And C, because we want to close the transaction as soon as possible, have the client confirming the transaction, processing the payment, and then we just deliver the product. Terms and conditions, I spoke already a lot today. Make sure that they are covered. Now, I'll talk in a moment about how to do that, depending on whether you're on a platform or sell through your website. So the e-commerce platforms usually provide their own set of rules. You as a online store owner at one of these platforms, usually would not have the ability or the freedom to change the terms of sale. But if you sell through your own website, it is up to you to define the terms of transaction, to define all the points that I already discussed today and those that I will also speak about on October 16th. Like, even if you operate your own website and you do not know where to start, what I always would say before you start spending money on lawyers, go to one of those bigger websites, find their terms and conditions. Inside terms and conditions, find the terms of sale, and just select what is relevant for your type of business proposition, for your products, for your services, copy paste it into your website, and that should be enough to start. And once the business operates, once the business has its own financial resources, find someone who will prepare it, like myself or any other consultant in this area. What to include initially, disclaimers, limitation of liability. Limitation of liability is important, is one of the most important provisions that you can include. In some states, the law will govern this aspect, but even there, you can sell something very little. You can sell a toy for $5 or $10, but if as a result of the toy someone gets injured, the liability could grow exponentially and disproportionately. You can end up being sued for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the only way to limit it to a certain extent is to provide the limitation of liability, to say, I'm liable for the sale, I'm not liable for the product. Let's say if you're just reseller of someone else. If you actually produce those products, define what the manufacturer is liable for, what is not liable for. Let's say you sell an alarm clock, and the alarm clock doesn't injure me, but it doesn't sound the alarm on the time that I set it to sound, and I miss a very important meeting. Are you responsible for the losses because I missed that meeting? So all these things should be covered in the limitation of liability. And as I already said, think about the worst case scenario. Don't overdo it, reasonably, and then provide the solution for the worst case scenario at that specific time. Privacy. So working online, and since internet became an essential part of our life, we as business owners must always be thoughtful of what are the privacy rules and limitations and responsibilities applied to us, especially when we work online. We collect a lot of personal information through online processing and transactions, and there are different jurisdictions with different laws and rules that apply. So in Canada, we usually are covered by the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Devices Act. There's also Personal Information Protection Act that will cover what we're responsible for as businesses who collect and store personal information of our clients. So there would be basic rules. I always suggest business owners that operate websites prepare basic privacy policy that is included in the website. And if you look at the larger competitors or just larger corporations overall in Canada, you will always find terms and conditions or terms of use as a link at the very bottom of the website, and along with it, privacy policy that will provide such rules as what we collect, how much of information do we collect, how do we retain and use this information. Usage of information is very important because we must provide to our clients for which purposes we can or cannot use that information. Protection of information from unauthorized access, use, distribution. Nowadays, Canadian privacy legislation also requires us to provide a public notification in the case of major data breach, and you can see it a lot. Larger companies that would post all over the news or in certain websites notices about the breach that they're dealing with, and what do they do to protect information from further unauthorized access or distribution. A question that will rise is who is responsible for the information that is being collected by you through the e-commerce platforms, or by e-commerce platforms through your store. And it is important to learn in the terms and conditions and privacy policy of those e-commerce platforms how they define the responsibilities of the parties. Now, especially with the payments, the situation can become very complicated because payment processors collect credit cards information. Sometimes business owners, let's say, would ask a person to fill in the form and send them the credit card information. Now, it could see as a very innocent and simple act. Many businesses do that, but the point is, the moment you got my credit card information, there are very long list of rules and regulations that you have to comply with. So whether you're PCI compliance and protection of information, can you store this credit card information on your computer or website, or do you have to dispose of it? Now, what happens if it's being stolen and distributed? The responsibilities could be very, very, very serious. So we have to learn the environment and get prepared to. Unique circumstances. So learn international laws, especially if you, again, orient your website to certain destinations. GDPR, you can see a lot of it lately all over the websites and the internet, from newspapers to stores. GDPR is the set of European laws. They do not apply to Canadians, but the way that they structure it is that if your website is visible or accessible from Europe, it must comply with GDPR. And GDPR is just like PIPEDA in Canada, is a set of those rules that define which information you collect, how do you collect it, which levels you collect information, how do you store it, protect, and much more. You also have to advise the client of which information you collect. And that's why a lot of times when you go on a European website and you see this privacy note pops out with the GDPR reference, you'll see lengthy explanation of what the website will collect, how it will use it or not use it, how it will store and protect. Now, Canadian anti-spam legislation is indeed a unique circumstance, and many businesses do not realize the extent of it, but that law was introduced some time ago. It's in full force nowadays, and essentially what it says is that we as business owners, we cannot spam people in Canada, and it means that we cannot send emails about our products, marketing, advertising, any other types of emails, unless we were requested for this, by our clients. Now, request or consent of the client could be express. So when, let's say, I subscribe to your store or newsletter, you can include there the express consent for the receipt of email from you, or it could be implied. So let's say if I visited ever your store and left my my card with you, my information, I submitted my email to your website, it could be considered as an implied agreement that you will send and you will use that information to send me marketing information. But what is for sure is not allowed is to use mass distribution platforms where hundreds of thousands of emails with your advertising and marketing is being sent out to people who have no idea about who you are and what your business is. All these distributions in Canada for the last 5-7 years are considered to be illegal. I know that we have a lot of them going on still, and my spam folder is filling up every single day. But these are the rules, and we as business owners have to be aware of them. They're also very, very heavy fines, so hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Privacy Commissioner can impose as a result of Canadian anti-spam legislation. I think it's a final chapter for today's presentation, a major one, and that's about protection of intellectual property. Again, we will have a separate session specifically allocated for the protection of IP and what is IP, better understanding how it affects our businesses. I'll talk today specifically about an IP applicable to e-commerce businesses, online place businesses. And so first of all, we have to understand what types of IP exist. For today's conversation, I'll talk about trademark and copyright, because other ones, they're more important for physical businesses or businesses that develop innovations. Trademark and copyright exist in almost every single online business. So let's talk about them. They are the most relevant topics. So trademark is the protection that the law provides to your name of a product or service, not company. So think about it this way. If Microsoft would call each of its products, Word, Excel, Access, or anything else, just that without using Microsoft next to each, Microsoft would not be able to trademark the name Microsoft because it would be associated with the company, not with the product. So when you sell products under the name which is different from your company's name, either combine the names together or just be prepared to the fact that you cannot trademark the company's name. Trademark can protect name, such as Nike, shape, just like a Nike smile, and sound. Sound is a relatively new area of protection, but if there's a unique sound like a music or scream, spends diamonds for those who knows and remembers. All these like unique sounds that could be associated specifically with a product. Essentially, if you hear the sound, I think about the product, could be trademarked and could be limited from use by any other competitors in the same industry or the same field. In order to register trademark, it must be unique, so no one else used it before. And first to register, again, no one else used it before. Now, an important area is the geographical limitations, especially for online businesses. And the point is trademark is protected only within jurisdiction of one country where you register it. So if your business operates in Canada, and I would say 99% of your clients are in Canada, register in Canada. But if you plan or you already operate across border for the US, you will need to go to US and register trademark there, and so on and so forth in each country that you consider as an important market for your products or services. You will have to register there because trademark registration in Canada alone will not help to protect the trademark in other countries. There are different international treaties. They do not provide for additional protection. they provide for the easier registration process, proper definition of at which time the trademark got registered, but nothing beyond that. Finally, the time. So trademarks are not forever. They usually expire within 10 years. You can renew them as long as you can prove that you keep on using the name of the product or the service, but you will have to follow up as a trademark owner and make sure that you renew it. Second major area of intellectual property applicable to online business is copyright. And copyright is different. Copyright is technically protection that is provided for artistic expression against copying it. That's why it's copyright. It's your right as the creator to prevent copying by other people. So first of all, copyright exists almost forever. I should put a quote marks. And the reason is because it would exist for the life of the creator plus 20, 25, sometimes 50 years. Laws change, but many years after the creator dies. So I would say in the business environment, today's pace of life, it's almost forever. Copyright exists worldwide. It's not limited by law. It's not limited to jurisdiction. It is protection of your creation from copying by anyone. But as a business owner who creates artistic expressions, whether text, images, music, paintings, you have to enforce your copyright. And enforce means do the searches or hire consultants that will do them for you to make sure that other people do not breach your copyright. And if they do, you have to prevent, you have to act actively in timely manner, or otherwise the law will consider you as someone who agreed to that breach. Domain name cannot be protected, but it could be used to prove when you started using certain name as a trademark, or to prevent others from using similar names in their business industries. And now we had our previous presentations, those who did attend, where I covered the questions of corporation or sole proprietorship and which form of business operations fits different businesses. In online, I will say in advance, my opinion, because of the extent of liabilities, because of the exposure to multiple clients at the same time, because of the different jurisdictions that you will be dealing with, corporation is the right way to do. Corporation, so essentially, I have just a check mark list here that I provided at our previous presentation about the different considerations that should guide us when we decide to incorporate or do the sole proprietorship. As I say, corporation is a preferred way of operating an e-commerce, unless you do something very, very simplistic and simplified, and you come to a conclusion there are no legal liabilities whatsoever. There are three major considerations that we have to consider when we decide which form of operations to use. One is legal liabilities. The higher the liabilities are, the corporation is better solution. Taxes, again, the higher the profit is, the higher taxes you will pay as a sole proprietorship, because the personal taxes are progressive, corporate taxes are not. And up to first $500,000 of profits, if your company is owned by a Canadian resident, you will be subject to 12.5%, which becomes much more beneficial, somewhere in excess of $50,000 of profits per year. So corporation would be a better solution. Apologies. And partners. If you want to expand your business, work with partners, investors, grow your business beyond just yourself, corporation is the only way to do it. So these three considerations should guide you when you decide whether to incorporate or do the sole proprietorship. Again, my opinion is written at the very bottom of the slide. Here's the list of useful links. If you still didn't incorporate, you can do that. If you want to register a business name, you can do it through the Ontario business name registration. There's a new system, pretty much accessible. You can do everything online. You don't need to use intermediaries anymore. Again, federal or provincial corporation we covered in a previous presentation. Canadian Intellectual Property Office, CIPO, is the one where you can register trademark or register or kind of get a certificate of a copyright, or you can search for existing trademark to make sure that you do not use the name that is already registered. That you don't need your Guide to Employment Standards Act unless you employ. It's from the previous presentation. CRA online services. Here you can either register for business number or use their guidelines to search additional information. Very complicated, not a useful tool, but still. This is my project called businessdocs.ca. So if you want to use certain template documents, you can search for them and buy them from my website. I still produce and prepare additional documents. So if you do find it useful, visit frequently to see if some other documents that I added will be useful for you. So this covers today's presentation. I apologize for being late. There was a problem with the link. I also apologize for running through the presentation because we're late. As I said already, all these slides will be available for your use or reference. Just don't distribute them online. Keep them for yourself. Here's my contact information if you decide to contact. Here's again the link to my YouTube channel. And thank you everybody for being with us today. Let me see if we have any questions. Seems like the chat is empty. So if you have any questions, we have a couple of minutes left. It's actually 7. I understand that MPL, the library, should move to another presentation. But if you have questions, so you will come up with the questions later on, just email me at info@cbs.ca. I'll do my best to answer them. That's mostly it. So thank you for visiting us. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Yeah, it seems we don't have many questions today. I guess it's also because I had to run through the presentation. So anyway, as I said, you will have more questions. Just email me. And thank you for being with us today.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Eugene. We apologize for all the technical difficulties.
No issue happens.
So if anybody does have questions, you can take your time. I've figured out an alternate.
I think everybody is already disconnected. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.